Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of the SAP Weekly, where I'll be bringing to you the latest tech news and experiences I have faced while owning value for money tech in India over the past few years. This is your host Saptarshi, and this episode will focus on the experience I have faced with Fossil smartwatches and their service centers in India. Stainless steel is one material that I've been a fan of since it helps improve the structural rigidity of products, thus making them really durable. In fact, this was one of the major factors which made me choose the iPhone 11 Pro over the iPhone 12, since I really wasn't sure about the durability of aluminum bodied phones, even though my older phone, the OnePlus 3, had an aluminum body design. This was something that majorly drove me towards the Fossil smartwatch range as well. I've always been a huge fan of Fossil's watches since they've always been amazing to look at, even though they weren't really that functional per se. My first Fossil smartwatch was the Fossil Gen 2 Q Marshall, and I really did love that watch quite a lot since it was beautiful and I got it for an amazing deal on Amazon. While it did stutter initially due to some software bugs, once those were ironed out, the watch was absolutely fantastic. Factor in Fossil's 2-year warranty, and that made my ownership experience even more peaceful. However, once the watch crossed that 2-year mark, things started to take a turn for the worse. About a month after that 2-year mark, the watch started freezing and crashing on me. While this turned out to be a Wear OS bug and not really Fossil's fault, factory resetting the watch 5 times in a month was surely inconvenient. The watch never gave me any issues as such beyond that, until that one fateful day when the watch display just popped out of the casing when I had gone out for a run. While the watch was still working fine, I really didn't want to super glue it back into place since the battery was swollen and I was scared that it would explode on my wrist. I took it to the Fossil service center in my city and they promptly took it in for service and asked me to circle back after a month. After waiting for a month, I received a message that stated that the battery had to be replaced, but since they had no spare parts for the same, they were offering me a buyback at 50% of the MRP. While I was ecstatic about the fact that I had purchased the watch at a 45% discount and was getting back almost the same amount of money I'd invested in the watch after 3 years, this is where I believe Fossil's scam started. Fossil's buyback policy had a few riders. The first being that the 50% buyback was only valid if I purchased something from their offline store, and the second rider was that I would have to pay full price, regardless of the discounts going on at the store. While I was on the lookout for another touchscreen watch from Fossil as a replacement, I was essentially paying the same amount of money the watch was available on Amazon for, after using the buyback rebate. I was hence not very keen on buying the Gen 4 or even the Gen 5 since I would be just nullifying the valuation of my older watch. At that point, I remembered watching Mr. Mobile's YouTube video on the Fossil Collider HR, and the watch's design really did interest me. While he did point out the negatives in his first impressions video, I was willing to live with those compromises and figured that the watch would be easier to maintain since it was closer to a regular watch rather than a smartwatch. The shopkeeper also assured me that the watch would be very reliable and would barely cost anything to repair when compared to a smartwatch with complicated electronics. I bit the bullet and decided to get the Collider HR since it was not offered at a discount anywhere, even after being 1 year old at that point of time. The watch worked flawlessly for a month, and I really enjoyed watching the watch hands getting out of the way whenever I received a notification. However, after a month of usage, the watch started having a really weird set of issues. Firstly, the watch's glass would fog up whenever I would step into an air-conditioned room, a car, or even a mall. I drove down to the mall where the store was located since Fossil didn't have any kind of pickup service available for servicing watches. The technician at the service center asked me to wait for an hour, post which he claimed that he had sorted out the issue by sealing the open parts of the watch. It really didn't strike me then as to how can a brand new product have openings that allow moisture and air to get in and hamper the performance of something that is claimed to be well built. As I had expected, the issue recurred yet again once I got home. I called the Fossil helpline, and this got connected to the international line since no one was available on the Indian support line. I was connected to this lady from Miami who asked me to put the watch in rice. Yes, I kid you not. Their way of going about with an issue like this was even more twisted than Indian jugaad. I informed her that the watch was just a month old and she asked me to go back to the service center so that they could resolve this for me. The day after, there were many more things that started to go wrong. The watch started heating up for no reason. The battery life dropped down to a day's backup from the 9 to 10 days I was getting before that. And the watch started burning my wrist. Yes, this actually happened, and there was actually the heart rate sensor's imprint on my wrist. This really freaked me out, and I went back to the service center the very next week and asked the store to replace the watch. While the store manager was arguing with me at first, he did eventually yield and give me a new unit after giving me back the old box and charger. While this experience did shake me up, I was optimistic that the watch would not give me any issues post this. However, I was wrong. A month after getting the replacement watch, I started noticing that the e-ink display inside the watch's dial had started to fade away. While this fade was minimal at first, eventually the screen went entirely blank after another month had passed by. I visited the service center yet again, asking the service representative for an explanation and a replacement. He told me that he had already given me a replacement and I should be grateful for that. Also, as per him, it wasn't that faded and was still usable. I really wasn't in the mood to argue any longer, so I just let it slide and I went back home. I called up the Fossil helpline after this, but neither were they apologetic nor did they offer me any solution other than going back to that same service center. I went back after a month since I was a little busy with some work and promptly asked the person at the store to send it for service at least if he couldn't give me a replacement. After some back and forth, he eventually agreed and told me to check back after a month since it would take them a month to send it to Bangalore and have it fixed. I agreed since I really didn't have a choice. Fast forward to 2.5 months from that day, and the watch was still under service since spare parts were not available and they were facing issues due to COVID. While I do understand that COVID had caused a lot of issues for people, there was never any concern shown for my well-being when I was made to visit their store/service center 5 times over the past 6 months inside a mall at the peak of the first wave of the pandemic. The store manager was also never apologetic or even nice to me. He always had that tone that he was right and I, the customer, was wrong. What was the point of me owning a watch if I wasn't able to even use it during all this time? In fact, when I sent an email across asking about how long the service would take, the store manager called me up and rudely kept telling me that it'll take time and that I'll have to be patient. I never even imagined that a paying customer would be treated this way, and this experience really did leave a bitter taste in my mouth about Fossil's products overall. While I am still a fan of their designs, this would probably be the last Fossil product I'll ever purchase. I received my smartwatch back yesterday from the service center, this being the 7th time I had to visit them during the pandemic. Even if the message promised home delivery, the store manager insisted that I had to visit their store to collect a watch. Even while giving me my watch back, the store manager didn't even bother to apologize to me once for all the inconvenience I had to go through. I really don't want to take names, hence I've not mentioned any names or the city where I faced all this, but I'm never ever going to purchase a smartwatch from Fossil ever again. And I might even just sell this watch off as scrap since I don't want anyone else to go through this ordeal. I have purchased an Apple Watch Series 6 as a replacement. Yes, I'm finally back to smartwatches with the square-shaped dials yet again. While the Apple Watch doesn't look as pretty as Fossil's offerings, I'm pretty sure it will last me at least 4 to 5 years, and having it serviced won't be as much of a nightmare as I had faced with Fossil. That's all I've got for this episode, guys. Do drop me a like if you'd like to hear more stories such as this. I will also be bringing in a new segment very shortly. This experience that I recently faced got me thinking about how getting electronics serviced in India is really a negative experience overall, apart from a very few brands who actually take care of their customers. Stay healthy, stay safe. Catch you guys in the next one.